Hello and welcome to Women of Influence podcast. Hi, I'm Jaylen with the J Group Real Estate Team.
The Great American Speak Off.
One of my favorites.
I just get so excited every time I see that little intro. It just gets me so motivated. Welcome, everyone, to another Women of Influence broadcast. Today, I am so honored to have with me the one and only Sondra Shannon. Welcome, Sondra.
Thank you, Jaylen, for having me today. I'm excited to be here, and I love that intro, too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Sondra and I met at a Grant Cardone 10X event. And my husband and I both fell in love with not only you, with you and your husband, and just such great energy about you, and just such a great connection. I'm glad that we've stayed in touch over the past, 18 months or however long it's been. But Sondra, you are a master at helping businesses with their attractions and their revenue and profitability to do with their ticket sales. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do? It's really interesting.
Sure. I know it's definitely its own thing. And still to this day, I feel like my mother doesn't understand what I do for a living because it is such a unique business to be in. But, we're focused on helping ticketed attractions or ticketed businesses really find profitability, to create as many offers as possible, just to kind of have something for everyone when you are either hosting an event or you have a ticketed business, like an attraction. And attractions, kind of encompass everything from theme parks, water parks, zoos, museums, tourist attractions. I mean, you name it. I mean, we all buy these experiences. I know you guys like concerts. So even something like that, festivals and concerts, are things that, we love to be able to participate in and help people, not only monetize these events, but also, create a better buying experience when you are doing this, because it can be quite a big investment, especially if you're taking a family.
That sounds like such a huge undertaking. I know personally, speaking of concerts, Kelly and I do go to a lot of concerts, a lot of festivals, and there have been some experiences that have been a little bit less than favorable. So I can imagine there's a lot of detail and work that goes into that detail in that experience. Without getting the audience too confused, can you walk us through what should that process look like to make it seamless?
I mean, for me, I'm a big advocate of having offers for everyone. And, what that means is a guided shopping cart experience and very clear communication on what they can expect, what's being offered. And I mean, not without getting too deep into the weeds of the processes, because every institution might have us implement different things depending on what their offers are. But oftentimes just making sure that, it's a well thought out process. You don't want people to be confused. Like you just said, you don't want, this is not part of the memorable experience, although it is often the first experience that many patrons of festivals, concerts, theme parks, any of these ticketed venues, it's the first experience they have with you. So while we don't want, if we're memorable, it's oftentimes because the experience was not great, right? So
Right.
we're here to help solve that and really make sure that, if I'm planning to go to an attraction as a mom with a family of 5, I don't want to have to juggle multiple platforms, which oftentimes creates a lot of confusion, or have to guess whether or not one of us is getting in because 3 of us bought adult tickets and 2 had children's tickets. And how is that going to work? Just really take the guesswork out of that buying experience and make it so that, it's easy. It should be easy.
So that sounds great. So basically is what you do, you help businesses create that ticket experience. And you basically handle it from soup to nuts, from the website design, app design, and making the whole process completely like click, you know where to go, here's what to do.
Yeah. And what's really unique about us, and I love that you mentioned the websites, is we create a seamless experience from their marketing site. So their public page, whether it's a landing page or it's just the website in general. For us, we're not trying to be gatemaster for these businesses on their site. We are trying to be part of that experience. It's fully branded for them. It's creating, for me, I like to say we're creating an experience within their website, but it's about the client that I'm serving, which is the attraction or the festival, and not so much about the ticketing experience. Because I'm sure you've been on ticketed sites. I mean, I don't want to say the name of the biggest elephant in the room, right?
Right?
You go to buy concert tickets, and their name is all over that.
Mm-hmm.
And our company, and with regards to our mission, it's about making sure they're massively successful. And what is being showcased is that venue.
Got it. I'm sure you probably can't mention names, but what have been maybe a couple of your favorite projects that you've worked on, as far as maybe a couple of different types of projects or brands, or types of attractions?
When early on in my career, so I've been with the company for 23 years. And actually when I started, I was the youngest and only woman in the company. And I was definitely the low man. It was,
Got to
it
start
was,
somewhere, right?
yeah, they were I mean, I know the founder was taking a risk on me, and I knew that a lot of the men on the team were struggling with the idea of having this young woman on the team who, I did bring some operational experience because I had worked for a company that was a customer of Gatemaster first. But one of the most memorable experiences that I have, I'll tell the story the way that I usually tell it, was I went to work for somebody who used to, we were working for a man who used to own the Philadelphia 76ers, and he was creating a museum. And it was one of the first museums to ever implement animatronics and access control. And access control did not even exist. This was probably like 2003, 2005. We had turnstiles back in the old days, but this was where you would take a ticket and you would scan it. So like you've seen today, you can scan your phone, you can scan a ticket.
Yeah.
And we had developed our own access control that we mounted on a turnstile. And we built it in our lab. And when I got there, and I was in Key West, we set it up, and it didn't work.
Oh no.
It didn't work. And so he says, this guy who hired us, he says, well, she's not leaving till this works. And
Oh no.
it took him about 12 weeks to get it to work. And I often tell that story. Why it's my favorite? Because he put me up in his penthouse. So I had his entire penthouse all to myself, beautiful view. I mean, it was not awful to be in Key West for, I think it was like 12 weeks or something. It was a great experience. And, I had to learn in that moment, how to move gracefully through a tough situation. But I often say, how tough can it be when you're in a penthouse in Key West, right? And you're
Exactly.
25 years old. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was having a great time. So that is one fun experience. And of course, they remained customers of ours for 15 years. They later shut down the museum and ended up moving some of the assets, but it's now just a restaurant, so they don't need ticketing anymore. But it was a great experience to work with them. I think another one that I really love to tell the story about is, we were working, and I can mention this one, Atlantis in the Bahamas. We did the access control for the kids club. So we were scanning passports and so it goes beyond ticketing, right? So you buy a ticket for this, but then we would also scan the passports to verify the age of the people who would be in the kids clubs, because they segment out by age groups. And I spent some time in the Bahamas working on this project, and everybody says, you're so lucky you get to go to Atlantis. And it was like being a kid in a candy store, because I'm stuck in like a basement IT department. I never really even got to walk the property because we were working on this project. But it was really neat because back then, and this was probably 2010, we were moving the people there from cash registers. So we were teaching them how to use computers and, modernizing the experience there. And I think that was, I guess those are my two favorite stories to tell, but
That
there's
is
plenty
awesome.
more. I mean, it's been 20 years.
I'm sure you handled them both like a boss babe that you are. So I can imagine like looking back to, how I was when I first started using computers, like back in college. I'm like, what's that? That thing's weird. I can imagine you may have gotten quite a bit of pushback from some of the people you were working with, like the actual in the businesses.
Yeah, I tell a story all the time. I come from back when season passes were given, we would take a Polaroid picture and laminate it. And then, coming on to this team, and I think it was 2002, I came on the team, having then to move people from that type of low tech, no tech to high tech. And, a majority of my work was spent teaching people how to use computers. Because if you were in the industry at that time, you likely didn't grow up with computers. I didn't.
Right.
I mean, at least not, I mean, there were computers in the home, but I didn't grow up in a family that had one. So
Got
it
it.
was,
So I have to ask you, how on earth did you even get into this industry?
it's an interesting story. I was working for a family entertainment center in Southern California, and I had, even from a young age, like even my first job at 16, I started running other people's businesses for them. I had my
Wow.
first job. I ended up just kind of like, maybe it was ignorance because I didn't have any real fear and of the risk of business, because I really wasn't taking on the risk, but I was running these businesses. My first job, I ran a restaurant, and then later moved on to this family entertainment center. The owner was really hands off, let me run the place, and I was able to take his business far beyond where he had ever taken it, including to sell, which is why I no longer had a job. But I was using Gatemaster, and one of the guys who was on the team, he knew that I was kind of a super user of this tech, because that's really, I use quite a lot of the technology to leverage what I was doing to grow that business. And so I knew how big of an impact this tech could have. And when the founder was looking for somebody not only to help him create the second iteration of the tech, but also support the clients, somebody recommended me. So it's the important, when we talk all the time about networking and everything's about who you know, I
Right.
feel very lucky that in that moment, somebody knew me and recommended me for this. And I didn't think that I would ever be the CEO. I honestly just was happy to be on the team and to be involved in technology. And at that time, I think we were less than 10% women were. So it was
Wow.
just a cool experience.
That's amazing. I can imagine that that probably had to have felt at the time very empowering, even though you were very young and didn't necessarily know like all of the ins and outs and exactly, the impact of what had been happening, right? That is so cool. And it sounds like, some of it might be you just kind of followed the path and this is where you were supposed to go. And you were like really, really good at it.
Yeah, and I also, one of the things. So I spoke on stage for an organization called Women Impact Tech a few times, and they've often asked me to talk about, how did I get here? And it's, I think if I can think of one thing that led me to where I am today, it was just a willingness to be able to solve problems and to see it through. Grant says, you mentioned that we met at a 10X event, and Grant says all the time, you can't lose if you don't quit. And I feel like that really resonates with me, because I just never quit on anything. I will see it through till the end. It might not be perfect, and I might make mistakes along the way, but even if I make a mistake, I'm willing to stick with it and try and solve that and be a part of the solution, not just the problem or the mistake that might have been created. Because I mean, even still today, so much of what we're doing as this company is growing and becoming what it is. And it's a 30-year-old company. It's seen many different lives, is a function of us taking risks and not giving up.
Exactly. I love what you said. You can't lose if you don't quit. And like, even if, like you said, if you don't achieve the result that you want, the fact that you never gave up, like that in itself makes you a winner, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep trying, by golly, till I
Yeah.
get some resolution here. I love that so much. So what is on the horizon for you, my young dear, my young lady?
I'm headed in 2 weeks to the Ticketing Fairness Coalition, just trying to get more involved in not necessarily the politics of ticketing, but maybe the ethics of ticketing. Like you said, you might have had some interesting experiences buying tickets for these festivals and events, and really, leveraging my expertise. It's been 23 years. And just speaking about not quitting, if I had no idea that, I would eventually be seen as an expert in this space, a global expert in how ticketing should be done. Yeah, and now leveraging that time that I spent to become an expert in my lane. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm not an expert in, but this is certainly somewhere that I feel confident in, and I feel like there is a big impact that I can make in terms of leveraging what I've learned over the years, and then what we know to be successful for the venues that we work with. We work very closely with them. In fact, we're oftentimes managing the ticket booths for many of the venues that we work with. So we learn so much about these businesses and how we can help them. And I feel like the next step for me is I I don't know if I want to be on a board, but I know that they're calling me, and
Yeah.
I think there's a place where I can have impact there, and make some changes in the future of business, and maybe even create more space for women, right? Because it's still a very male dominated field.
That would be fantastic. Now, I want to go back to something that you touched on regarding the ethics of ticketing. Like, what are some things that have happened that could be considered ethical? Like, I'm curious to find out, like, what would that look like?
Well, I think when they talk, there's been most of the issues that we see in ticketing have to do with piracy and theft, right?
Right.
And then also, now that we see all these ticket exchanges, there's all sorts of problems that come with that. And, the last thing that you want to have happen is somebody told me a story just a couple weeks ago at Intix about how they had a grandmother and a granddaughter who showed up to a Broadway show, and they had purchased fake tickets.
Oh,
And
no.
both of them are sitting in this venue in tears because they were expecting to have this amazing, family experience, and they were being turned away. And how do
Oh,
we work on making sure that that doesn't happen? Because to me, what even more so than the cool things that I'm doing in this business, experiences I think are a human, uh, a quality of life
mm-hmm.
experience, right? These are quality of life experiences. They change the way that we we look at the future, and we look fondly on them in the past. And it's a way that many people use to connect with family and friends. And the last thing you want are people crying in the lobbies, sad because they have fake tickets. And that is really isn't that a shame? Like, that is heartbreaking to me.
Oh. Yeah, that explains why I've seen at a lot of venues, they have the I guess it looks like a QR code or something, and it's ever changing. So you can't like screenshot it and share it with somebody, right? Because it's going to keep like, what do you call that?
Yeah, it's like a rotating, they call it like a rotating QR code. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why they're having to implement that. But that also makes things far more complex for you, right? To manage that. So those are the things that we're looking at. How can we create a better experience and still not only maintain the value of that ticket, but also prevent any of the theft that can happen? And I think there's a lot of things that can be done. And, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel necessarily, but it takes people who have been doing this a long time to recognize, because we still have venues that want to go back in time. And we're like, no, you don't want to do that.
No,
Those old,
absolutely not.
I was on a call just the other day and somebody recommended to the venue that they, you know, punch a hole in the ticket. And I'm like,
No,
no, that's not what we want. That's not what we want to do. This is not,
bad idea.
1995. So,
Oh my goodness.
that's what I mean about it. But then also things like, when we talk about ethics, some of these companies will charge $25 a service charge per ticket. And that creates a real barrier for people in certain demographics to be able to even attend these events. So when
Mhm.
we look at like inclusion of everyone, are those things affecting that? So I those are things that I'm really advocating for and looking into. But that's also what brings me back to, you got to have something for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of a recent venue that we purchased tickets for. And like to your point, the service fee was almost as much as the price of the ticket. We're like, seriously? And we
Yeah.
paid it, of course, because we wanted to go see the artist, but it can get a little bit ridiculous, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're forced into it. And I mean, and I mean, in this next couple of weeks, they're going to be presenting some of the cases against, you know, that artists have brought against the ticketing systems because of that barrier, right? I mean, we have cheap seats and we have expensive seats. There's something for everybody, but what we're finding is that even some of these fees can create that barrier for people, and maybe that's where the fairness comes in.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah.
So, Sondra, if a business wanted to hire you to take care of their ticketing needs, like how would somebody get a hold of you?
Well, you can get a hold of us right there on our website, gatemaster.com, I'm totally miss it. Gat. I
Let me
can't,
type
I
in the
can't.
banner here for
You're gonna
everybody
type
to
it in.
see.
It's
Gatemaster.com.
Gatemaster. Yeah. I've
Okay.
been saying this for 20 years. I can't believe I just got tongue twisted there. That's why I always tell people that's what you get when you have a dyslexic
Blah, blah, blah.
CEO.
I'm the
Yeah.
same way. There we go. Did I spell that correctly?
Yep, gatemaster.com. And you can, there's there's a chat right there. You can sign up for a discovery call, but you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm just Sondra Shannon on LinkedIn. I actually have a live show and we talk about a lot of these things with ticketing and how we can solve these problems, interview people who are making impact in ticketing and even just in attractions in general. I don't just focus on ticketing. I try to bring in experts that are in the different lanes that I'm not in, just to help these attractions and ticketed venues be more successful at what they do. But I would love to have you join me. Any of your
That,
audience join me if you're interested.
that's fantastic. And do they find that on the gatemaster.com website?
There is a place for the Live with Sondra on the gatemaster.com website, but you can also follow me on LinkedIn, and I post those shows a couple weeks ahead of time. So it's a live show. So it can be dirty sometimes, it's like just raw and we're just having a conversation and it's live. So I always have to warn people, it's not a pre-recorded show. So anything goes.
Anything else? I
I do.
love it. And for those of you who aren't actually watching this broadcast and you're just listening, Sondra is spelled with an Osondra. Sondra Shannon. So there we go. Well, Sondra, it's been such a pleasure seeing you again and chatting with you and finding out so much information about ticketing and events. And it was just very interesting to me. And thank you for all that you do to help the rest of us have a wonderful experience.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is so nice of you. And thank you for having me today. This is lovely.
Oh, you're welcome. I will get this over to you, and I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed day and a weekend, and we will see you next time.